We were, it was about 5 o'clock in the morning when I arrived at Bolzaneto, and we left Bolzaneto, I think it's about 30 hours later. Is that about right? Yeah, so it was till sort of Monday morning we were there. We were given very, very little food while we were there. We were deprived of sleep. We were made to stand up against the wall for like long periods of time. We were continuously threatened by the police and pushed along corridors. At one point I had my watch on and was made to stand against the wall with a broken wrist for like over an hour and 15 minutes because I was like keeping an eye on the time. And every time my arm started to like sort of slide down the wall, the policemen were coming behind me and start screaming in my ear, so I'd have to put my hands further up.
Erano molto più pesanti e violenti con i ragazzi e con gli stranieri. Penso che noi donne italiane eravamo privilegiate in questo clima di terrore.
It was literally a place of terror. The police were in complete control. They were forcing us to do a number of things which, as far as I'm concerned, amount to low-level torture. We were deprived of sleep, we were deprived of food, we were forced to stand spread-eagled against the wall. I saw people getting hit. I myself was hit on a couple of occasions. The police were the dominant force. They were attempting to terrorize us. They were attempting to break us.
Ogni tanto ci cambiavano di stanza e quindi c'era la speranza che qualcosa cambiasse, ti chiamavano per nome, invece andavi su un'altra stanza uguale, in piedi oppure in ginocchio per riposarsi. E così è andato avanti tutta la notte. Al mattino la polizia carceraria ha cominciato a menare un po' tutti, in particolare quel giorno se l'è presa con me in quanto ero forse il più anziano del gruppo, della gente che stava in quella stanza. E quindi mi hanno pestato sul collo, in faccia, mi hanno fatto dire Che Guevara figlio di una puttana e giubbotte così per loro diletto e scherzo.
No indication of what the charges were, no real attempt to take a statement from me, and these kind of basic procedures which you would have imagined to have been the basic procedures that Italian law would require the police to follow. So that obviously created a climate of enormous fear. Now there was kind of the arbitrary treatment of individuals stretched to...
Non mi hanno mai lasciato telefonare, quando l'ho chiesto hanno detto che vedevo troppi film americani, senza un capo di accusa, perché non so, cioè, a parte la denuncia che ha fatto questo poliziotto al momento che tiravo i sassi, non so neanche dove, io non ho avuto nessuna notifica di reato, non ho mai parlato con un avvocato.
Non ci hanno dato coperte, non c'erano letti, ci hanno fatto dormire per terra, dovevamo imprecare per poter andare al bagno. Ho assistito a una scena pietosa di un ragazzo che si è cagato addosso e che non hanno lasciato andare al bagno fino all'ultimo momento.
When I went to the toilet, I often had to keep the toilet door open and the bathroom door would be open and there'd be loads of policemen in the corridor outside. So
nell'infermeria mi era venuta la febbre, avevo chiesto delle gocce per la febbre, sono entrata e c'era un ragazzo con la faccia distrutta appunto alla Diaz che veniva visitato dal medico e il medico dettava, che era l'unico medico quella notte tra l'altro, che è rimasto lì per 2 giorni, il medico dettava all'infermiera scriva forte abuso di marijuana. Questo era un ragazzo straniero che quindi non capiva.
We had no idea what we were signing. We weren't told what our charges were, why we were being detained. We made repeated requests to make telephone calls or speak to a lawyer. We weren't allowed to make any calls, or we didn't have any contact with any lawyers or anything.
That there was no chance of any access to any outside body, whether it's parliamentarians, whether it's lawyers, whether it's consular staff. The police were in complete control. Effectively, I was disappeared from the outside world for a short period of time.
That people were lying around, as Nicola said, with very serious head injuries, which under normal circumstances you would imagine would require hospital observation.
Mi ricordo soprattutto di una ragazza tedesca che a cui erano stati sfracellati i denti davanti, il mento e la mandibola, e lei era stata mandata all'ospedale soltanto per dei punti e poi era stata rispedita nella caserma e soffriva di dolori lancinanti al volto e veniva spesso derisa e non veniva ascoltata.
And I was in prison with about, I think there must have been about 20 of us in Vergara prison, and you know, I think about 6 of us had broken arms, broken wrists, but some people didn't actually go to the hospital, so they didn't find out till later that they had the breaks. I mean, they were in a lot of pain. And I know, I've found out now that one of the American women I was in prison with, she had 3 different breaks in her hand and wrist, 3 separate breaks.
È più dura quando torni a casa, perché per un sacco di tempo continui a pensarci, continui ad avere gli incubi di notte. Ogni momento che sei da solo in macchina ti vengono in mente certe cose ed è difficile digerirle sicuramente. E per me che ho 40 anni l'ho superato bene. Credo che quei ragazzi di 20-25 anni credo saranno segnati per tutta la vita a livello emotivo.
I said already, it's a bloody story. I don't want to talk about it. It's awful. I tried to get the pictures of it out of my head, and they beat us, gassed us. There was,
yeah, whatever. There is still a trail going on, and so it's very hard to talk about it. But because you cannot always know if they, what you say is that they put it against you. So the lawyer said that we shouldn't really talk all about that.
And the thing is really that we have to try to live our normal lives again and to get all the pictures out of our minds, because otherwise it's not possible waking up at night screaming because you think you're somewhere else. So, I mean, there are always these questions, they're coming again and again, and I think it's time for us to move on and not to walk on the same place all the time.
So we rushed up to, I don't know which floor, quite upstairs, and kept looking out of the window and saw the policemen rushing in. And then we thought we have to stay in a room, and if they come in we're going to put up our hands to show that we are not going to resist any arrest and that we're peaceful. But they didn't care at all. They just opened the door violently and dragged us out on the floor. So they took Niels first, and after a second or two they dragged me out on the floor, and I fell down after the first or second stroke. Then they started beating and kicking. There were like 10 or 15 policemen standing in a circle around me when I fell on the floor. And I was lying on my left side and everyone was beating and kicking on my right side. They just kicked on my back and chest and stomach and legs, and I tried to protect my head with the arms above my head, but I couldn't manage to keep them on my head all the time because they were like beating on my right side and I could hear the ribs break, so I put the arm on the ribs because it really hurts. And then they hit me on the head and I got this wound on my head and I felt like warm blood running down my face. So it was sort of quite dark on the floor. It was only light outside and the emergency lights on, so I could only see like the trousers and the shoes they were wearing because I was lying on the floor. I couldn't like see any faces, or I'm not even quite sure what colour the clothes were they wore. And then they dragged me on the hair to the stairs, and I remember there was like smoke, but it was no tear gas, and it turned out I first considered it as being tear gas, but it turned out to be that stuff from a fire extinguisher, which they had spread on my boyfriend whilst he was lying on the floor, but at that time I didn't realise. So they dragged me on my hair down the stairs, and they were walking on the right and left side next to me and kept kicking in my head, like in the back. And I thought, I'm not going to have any teeth if I'm coming down. So I put the hands up to prevent my face from knocking hard on the stairs, so they kept hitting on my fingers. And downstairs they started beating again, and again I was lying on the left side and they started beating severely. So I came down another flight of stairs on my hair, but I wasn't like falling. The policeman, he was sort of carrying me on my hair, and my head was at the same height as his hips maybe. So, but I couldn't walk properly, so they kept hitting on my legs and on my ribs. And then they threw me on top of two other people who were lying there already. They didn't move at all anymore, and my head went against the wall and my legs were sort of lying into the room, and I had the one hand on my ribs, the arm, it sort of didn't move anymore at all, it just like protected the broken ribs, and the other one was moving strangely in front of my eyes, and I couldn't take any influence. I was just watching it moving. And later on I realized that someone was lying a little bit far away from me, and his legs were moving in the same way than my arms, so I guessed it must be a reaction of the muscles. And so I could then again see clearly, because whilst being beaten I couldn't really see. I had all these little stars in front of my eyes and like black little patches going around in my eyes, so I didn't realize so much whilst being beaten. But it didn't hurt that much, because I think your adrenaline level gets so high that you don't really feel so much. But whilst lying there and I not being able to move, I like felt the pain coming up,